welcome to everyone joining us today. My name is Maria Tranquilli, and I'm a program manager at NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit on a mission to democratize entrepreneurship. All of our public and immersive programs are free. We do not take equity or charge for participation, furthering our mission to remove barriers for all entrepreneurs across the globe. We are here to help our community realize their maximum potentials and to grow. As you may see in the chat, the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, along with our partner Mentor Cloud, is launching a major new movement called Mentor Makers, and our aim is to have 1 million mentor hours banked by 50,000 mentors in support of you, entrepreneurs. We ask you to take a moment to tag one or more mentors on social media who have helped you along the way. Just use the Mentor Makers hashtag in the post and tag at NASDAQ Center. By acknowledging your mentors, we hope to encourage others to do the same. We will open up for live Q&A at the end of this event, so please submit your questions in the Q&A function or the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And none of what we do would be possible without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, who include NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, BPM, NZTE, and Microsoft for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions. Before we begin, I would like to launch 2 different polls because during these unique times, we are curious about how you are feeling and what is keeping you up at night. So I'm launching these polls now. Poll number 1, how are you feeling currently? Are you feeling fearful, anxious? Are you surviving? Are you feeling optimistic? And what is keeping you up at night? Is it finance, sales, marketing, scaling, pivoting your team, or surviving? Let us know here, and this is how we bring programming like this to you based on what you are asking from us. So take a few moments, fill out this poll. As soon as everyone is complete, I'll end the poll and share those results. Just 1 or 2 more moments. Thank you all so much for filling this out. All right, I'll end the poll now and share those results. It looks like we have a very optimistic crew with us today. And what is keeping you up at night? It looks like finance is what's keeping you up at night. Thank you all so much. I'll stop that share. For filling out this poll, again, it helps inform NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center on how we design and who we bring on as experts to speak to our community. So we'll take into consideration what you've shared with us today. So without further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our very special guest, Jantsch, author of the Self Reliant Entrepreneur and Duct Tape Marketing. John, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
I am doing awesome, Maria. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share some hopefully thought-provoking information today.
Oh, I do not doubt that. John, I'll leave it to you and give me a shout out. Again, everyone that's here, thank you so much. John is here giving us the gift of his attention. And thank you all again for joining us and giving us the gift of your attention today. John, I'm handing it off to you.
All right, again, welcome, thanks. This topic of this, or the title of this, is the 7 pillars of self-reliance. But I'm here to warn you, first and foremost, I'm not going to talk about how to do anything today. In fact, nothing that is considered extremely practical. And I'm going to focus on why it is that we do what we do as entrepreneurs. As Maria introduced, I'm John Jantsch, and some of you may know me as the author of Duct Tape Marketing and a number of very practical how to do marketing books. But today, I'm going to talk about my journey and hopefully provide some information for your entrepreneurial journey as well. I started my business over 30 years ago, and like a lot of you, really without any plan, probably not necessarily knowing what I was going to do, other than that I knew I could hustle work. I knew I could get business. And so I went out and I did that. I hustled work. I got business. I got big clients. I got little clients. And really pretty much anybody that asked me to do something that was related to marketing, I said, sure, I can do that. Does that sound a little familiar to you? When the business was going great, I mean, I was growing, I was adding staff. I was pretty much thought I had this thing figured out. And then one day I get a knock on the door, and it's This is back, when people used to go door to door, right? I mean, go to offices and call on people. One of my team members came back and said, "Hey, somebody here to see you." And I was like, "Well, I'm busy. I mean, what? Are you selling copy or insurance or something?" He said, "No, I really think you need to see this person." So I was like, "Okay." So she handed me his business card and I looked at it and I remember, I can see it still to this day. Chris Davis, Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation. So now all of a sudden, I'm kind of wishing it was that copier salesperson or insurance salesperson. So a long story short, it turns out that one of my customers, one of my clients was being investigated for a number of federal charges. And I was being invited to come testify before a grand jury because they were basically rounding up everyone that showed up in this person's books. Now, the good news is I didn't really have anything of interest to share with them, but I will tell you this. I did know something was fishy there. I mean, I knew that there were some things that were probably not right about this particular client, but you kind of push some of that stuff under the rug. So this, what at the time for me was a very scary moment, was also a very pivotal moment in my business. It was 1994. I remember asking myself, I mean, how did I get here? This is not me. I mean, I had 4 small children at the time. I was like, what in the world am I doing? This isn't what I set out to do in business. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to this story. I mean, maybe not the FBI part, but relate to the story that it's so easy in some cases to get pushed in a direction or chase a direction or see an opportunity and think that, I need to go there. I need to be doing this. I need to chase what other people are doing. And I think what we do sometimes is we lose sight of where we're even going with any of this. And I think we sometimes have trouble staying aligned with the values. I mean, we know what our values are, and it's really easy to get pushed out of alignment with our values. So this is a moment in my life that I think really set me on the path that I'm on today. I said to myself, I'm going to read everything. I'm going to study. I'm going to become a student of understanding what it is that I need to do to stay true to myself. I mean, I don't know about you, but I read Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Stephen Covey. I mean, pretty much all the same books that are out there today by some of the most inspirational authors out there. And I got a lot of knowledge. I mean, I got a lot of things from those books. And I remember distinctly one day reading an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson called Self Reliance, and a line that just struck me and still today is one of the most impactful single sentences when I'm thinking about my business. There is no object so foul that intense light cannot make beautiful. To me, this is the essence of what it is to be an entrepreneur, that you have to have both extreme confidence in what you're doing and extreme empathy in the world around you. So I went on really a journey to study everything I could from this time period. Ralph Waldo Emerson was labeled during that time period a transcendentalist. It has nothing to do with transcendental meditation, but they called some of the folks at that time transcendentalists because they were writing about human nature. They were writing about what it is to be a human being in ways that weren't really that common at the time. But what they were doing is they were reacting to what was going on at the moment. You think about the mid-19th century when a great deal of this was going on. The United States was on the cusp of the Civil War. Women were starting to march in the streets to get the right to vote. We were actually poised to abolish the legal act of human slavery. It was probably the first counterculture period in America. And a lot of the writers, some maybe casually, some overtly, were saying, hey, it's time to rise up. It's time to actually think for ourselves. Maybe we don't have to listen to our parents or to our preachers or to the people that came before us. Maybe we need to start thinking for ourselves and doing for ourselves and following our own unique human nature. And I think that still today is some of the greatest literature for entrepreneurs. And so I went and not only became a student of that literature, but I also mined it in writing a book or writing something that was a passion project for me called the Self Reliant Entrepreneur. So many of the authors from that time period, I mentioned Ralph Waldo Emerson, Thoreau, Louisa May Alcott, Margaret Fuller, Herman Melville. I mean, a lot of the books we were asked to read in high school and in college and in literature classes. Even the fiction of that time period was the first time that you saw in American literature a protagonist who basically said, this may cost me everything, but I have to do what I have to do. I have to be who I am. And so I wanted to write a book that basically said, look, as an entrepreneur, again, I think that being an entrepreneur, the entrepreneurial journey is probably the greatest self-development program ever created. I mean, we have to go out there every single day and face something new, face the unknown quite often. So one of the things that I developed in mining this literature is certainly a practice, a morning ritual practice, which I know is become extremely common in a lot of circles, but certainly for entrepreneurs who I think have to prepare mentally, physically, and spiritually, I think, every day to go out there. And so I wanted to write a book that fit into kind of my morning ritual practice. And that's what this book is. And I'm not going to talk so much about the book. I want to talk about the pillars and the principles that the book is built upon. But I want to start today by reading one of the entries. I was joking with the team here at NASDAQ that I've written. This is actually my 6th book, and I've never had a book that I could just do a reading with. And this book really lends itself to it because every day is a calendar date. It is a morning book, or whenever you read it, it's a daily book that you are going to see some of the literature that I mined from that period. You're going to hear 100, 200 words from me, riffing on what that sort of contextualizing what that reading means to me. And then every day I also leave you with a challenge question. So just get a little bit ready because I'm actually going to share some of these challenge questions with you. And I think that the team's even going to ask you if people want to respond to these questions. They're kind of more thought-provoking questions, not necessarily do you know the answer questions, but let's see how we do. So I'm reading December 9th today because it's today's opening the book, and that's the date. Employing time. Have regular hours for work and play. Make each day be both useful and pleasant, and prove that you understand the worth of time by employing it well. Then youth will bring few regrets and life will become a beautiful success. That's from Louisa May Alcott's Little Women from 1868. And my thoughts on that. Here's the problem with time. It's the only thing we can't make, manage, or control. We can't speed it up, slow it down, or put it in some place for safekeeping. The big bucket of stress in our lives comes from the fact that we are convinced time is something we can direct. Stop trying to wrestle time to the ground and admit it's not possible. However, time is indeed something we can waste. Much like the first few squirts from a tube of toothpaste or whatever analogy you might use. Consider this. The biggest positive gains on any given day usually come from brief spurts of time spent. If that's so, then what if the goal became managing focus in an attempt to work fewer hours? Wait, what, you ask? What if we worked at getting better at focus management? Do what needs to be done most and figure out what doesn't need to be done at all. Maybe this new relationship with focus versus time could allow you to drop the reflex that tells you to sit at a desk from 9 to 5 or worse. When results achieved versus time spent becomes the main measure of output, you may eventually find that you can work 20 or 30 hours a week rather than 60 or 70. Try this for a while. Make your only time management goal to shrink your work week, instead of seeing what else you can cram into each day. So your challenge question for this particular day: what time do you plan to quit working today? What then will you need to get done first? So that was an example of one of the 366 readings in the Self Reliant Entrepreneur. As you can see, this book is meant not necessarily as a book you take on vacation and read. It's meant to be part of a daily practice. And as I was writing the book, there certainly are themes that reoccur. And that's what I want to focus on the rest of our time together, is what I call the 7 pillars of self-reliance. Now, let me first start by talking about this term self-reliance. If you Google that right now, don't do it right now because you're listening to me, but if you were to Google that, you're gonna come across a whole bunch of blog posts and websites that talk about building your own house, making your own furniture, killing your own food, sewing your own clothes. The idea that this rugged individual goes by themselves and doesn't need any help from anyone else. And as Emerson meant it in his essay, Self-Reliance, nothing could be farther from the truth. And certainly, as any of you as entrepreneurs certainly have come to realize, is that there's very little we can do without the help of others, without the support of others, without the trust of others. And this idea of self-reliance has a great deal more to do with understanding what your unique calling is, what your unique path is, and trusting it enough to not be knocked off of that path. That's all it is. And when you have that level of self-reliance, it actually makes you more empathetic to the plight or the needs or the cause of others. So again, I wanted to set the at least my thinking straight on that idea of self-reliance, because I think a lot of people have the view, I think actually completely opposite of certainly how Emerson meant it, and certainly how I believe it applies to entrepreneurs. So let's get into the pillars. The first one is trust. And by this, I really mean trusting yourself, your heart, your ideas. It is so easy to doubt what it is that we're doing. And then there's certainly people out there that'll help you in that doubt. And in some cases, it doesn't even take them, because you've already got that conversation going on in your head. And you have to find a way to come to the place where you can trust so thoroughly that A, you're either for sure on the right path, or B, it doesn't matter because you're looking for it, that you'll find it. A lot of times people, to the place where I'm sick, when people are talking about find your why and your purpose, and all those things that are the books are written about now today. And I think I think all of those things find you when you're open to them. And I think that's the first part that we really have to wrestle with and to struggle with. And when we trust ourselves, we're able to then extend that trust to others. And that's the part that I think is so hard for entrepreneurs. We are so driven by looking at what other people are doing, competing with businesses that are maybe selling the same thing as we are, that we have a tendency, I think, to contract, rather than expand. And so this is, as I'm going to suggest about all of these pillars, these are practices that I think we have to actively work on. This isn't something that you wake up one day and say, okay, I was listening to this guy talk and he said I need to trust myself more fully. This is something that might take you years. But if you don't start working on it every single day, you're going to find that your entrepreneurial journey remains a bit of a struggle. I happen to believe, after being in business for 30 years, that the definition of success is really just more about freedom. And that freedom is the freedom to make the choices that are right for you, and not about somebody else's vision or some amount of money in the bank. But we have to trust that that's true. So as I said, and you might want to grab, if you haven't already, grab a pen and paper, or however you take notes. I'm going to ask a series of questions, or I'm going to ask a question related to each of these pillars. And you may want to have an answer to this, or you may just think, wow, I need to think about that, because these questions are a bit challenging. They're not something that you are, maybe have even thought about or asked yourself. So here's the first one related to trust. What's the one thing that you feel is holding you back, and why are you letting it? I think a lot of times, until we stop and think about something like this, we might not even realize it's there. There's a great line in the Scarlet Letter, which is Nathaniel Hawthorne's work that I quote throughout the book. And I always mess this up, so I need to get it down. But essentially, he's talking about the protagonist in this, that the weight was finally lifted off her shoulders, and she makes a comment about the idea that she had no idea it was there. I mean, she didn't realize how much better she felt until the weight was lifted. And I think that that's true of things that are holding us back, that we don't even realize, that we are letting because somebody told us that's the way it is, or we believe something about ourselves that may or may not be true, in any fashion. I often tell people that I started my business when I did 25 years ago out of a great lack of confidence. Not out of, so many entrepreneurs are pictured as these, braced against the wind, fighting against all odds and surviving and, going their own path. Well, in my particular case, I started my business because I didn't think I was employable. I didn't think I could get a very good job, certainly not the kind of job my peers were getting. I, didn't really thrive in a college setting. And so consequently, my academic achievements, reflected that in the sort of true scale of how people did it. So I sometimes think that I started my business because I wasn't going to have to sit across a desk from anybody and explain to them, why I was worth something or not worth something. Now, I've come to terms with that. I've certainly succeeded on my own terms in having my own business, but I think that it took me a lot of years to realize that that was my true motivation. And that when I realized that, I could turn actually my true motivation into saving small business owners, one small business at a time. All right, I'm going to move on to the second one. Second practice, second pillar, courage. It takes a lot of courage to start a business. I don't necessarily think that small business owners are giant risk takers. In fact, I think in some cases, the biggest risk takers are people sitting employed, a mid-level management job at some nameless, faceless corporation are much bigger risk takers than entrepreneurs. But it certainly takes courage to say, I'm not really sure how this year is going to go. I'm not really sure how this month is going to go. I don't know if anyone is going to see my vision. I don't know if anyone is going to share my dream. I don't know if anyone is going to want to come to work here at this place, this thing that I've built. All of those things take courage. And it's not just one big leap of courage, it's every single day. So here's your question for today. Who do you need to stop trying to please? So much of what I think we do or don't do, or what we view as success or accomplishment, has to do with what we think other people will think. So many entrepreneurs either don't start this thing, they hang on to a job that they hate, they, don't go all in on what they know is the right opportunity, because what if they fail? What will people think? What if people think that's a silly idea? What if, my parents won't approve? All of these things take courage, and they take it on a daily basis. So Maria, are we getting any feedback, comments, quotes, questions answered by anybody that that you want to share? Before I keep on my soapbox here.
John, I think this is great. It looks like we have a few comments around managing time and how this is resonating with people. So I think we're good to go. And for everyone that is here, again, thank you so much for being with us today. We're so happy that you are with us. We have a question from Wafa in the audience. John, they're asking, what about yourself? Would you be willing to share what you need to stop trying to? That's a great question, Wafa.
No, it's a terrible question. I ask the questions, darn it. I'm happy to talk about any of these. I talked a little bit about, trust before and how it applied to me. I have 7 brothers and 2 sisters. I spent my entire childhood trying to get my parents' attention, as anyone who grew up in a big family can attest. And so consequently, one of the ways you do that is figure out, how to please people, and figure out, how to get along, how to be a chameleon, to to what was going on at the time, what your peers thought, what other, that I think is something that is really common in a lot of folks, not necessarily their childhoods, but just kind of in their subconscious, to a large degree. So certainly, I'm an author. I speak on, back when we used to do that on big stages and, and things. And so a lot of times, you get caught in this trap. And this probably happens at every level of being an entrepreneur. You get caught in this trap of people telling you that you're important and that you've arrived, and that, and a lot of times, you get more. Look at most of what we do on social media anymore. A lot of it's around, trying to put some sort of front up there that, everything's great and look at me and look how successful I've been. And, a lot of that is us trying to please others, to give an impression of others. But some of it is stroking our own ego. And that, when I say, who do you need to stop trying to please? Sometimes you got to look inward. For the answer to that. So don't get me started. I'll get really sappy on you guys.
Oh, well, John, I just want to say we have some great comments. And for everyone that is here that would like to share, please make sure you are selecting all panelists and attendees so the entire group can see your shares, unless you prefer for just the panelists, myself, John, and Isis, who is our production today, to see your comments. But I think it's just so incredible. We have some really honest shares. Angela, or Angela, depending on how you pronounce that, is mentioning, as an overachiever who didn't have parents driving me, I actually don't know where this comes in. Do you have any feedback on that? No idea why I'm so driven. Wondering when to be content, when is enough enough? Such a great reflection, Angela. Thank you. John, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I have to give my disclaimer that, I did write a book called The Self Reliant Entrepreneur, but I need to warn you that the self part is on you. Nobody can tell you how to be a self-reliant entrepreneur. You might make observations, you might get people's opinions on things, but this is really an inside job. This is something that, and I will tell you, Angela, that the fact that you're aware of this, that's huge step one, because I think that's all we can become aware of. And once we become aware of our behavior, we start witnessing our thoughts when things happen. Maybe we actually do something we think, after the fact, well, that's not how I wanted to respond. The fact that we're actually taking some accounting of that is how you then turn or do whatever it is you need to do to make that attribute a positive. I don't think we have any negative attributes, frankly. I think that we are nothing but a bundle of positive, unique positive attributes. And our job, quite frankly, is to just figure out, how to fine tune them so that they work for where we're trying to go on our unique journey. And that's where we have to really kind of drop like all these, this is what I should be. This is what a person who does what I'm doing looks like and acts like and talks like. I think because we can get as metaphysical as you want about this. There's no two of us that are alike, not in any way, shape, or form. We spend a great deal of our lives trying to mold ourselves to be like other people, but you have the only DNA that's you, and so you're in charge. You get to decide what it looks like and acts like and how it shows up in the world.
John, thank you so much. And just to reflect here on some of the responses, Angela says, great feedback. Thank you. It's definitely the year of self-awareness. And Wafa actually is saying this is exactly what he was referring to, the same as Angela. So thank you both so much for sharing. And very briefly, from NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center within our immersive programs, we actually see this from founders quite often. And John, I know you, having written this book, you've experienced this yourself, where you don't quite know what enough looks like. And I would say the peer network that we have here is really immensely impactful. And I will also say, reach out to them. This is a great time while we are listening to John move through these pillars, which I think are really resonating with so many people here. Make sure you put your LinkedIn link in the chat so you can actually connect with other founders and talk about some of the things that John is sharing here and reflect with them. I think especially because it is the end of the year, and we know we brought John on being the end of the year, knowing it is an immensely important time for self-reflection at this moment. So if anyone feels inspired, put your LinkedIn link in the chat so you can connect with each other. John, I'm going to hand it back to you. Call me in again if you would like to move.
So feel free to jump in at any time.
I will.
We've got 5 more of these here, so
Great.
people are going to be wrung out here by the end. Number 3 is curiosity, and there's so much that's been written on this recently, and I actually think that if I have anything that I would point to as being the secret to whatever level of success I've achieved, it's my insatiable curiosity. Again, going back to when you have a family with 10 kids, there's lots of stories. So going back to a story from my youth, and this is one of those stories that probably is part myth, but how stories in families get kind of blown up so they become true. But my parents, every now and then, not very often, every now and then would find some occasion to take all 10 of us someplace. Can you imagine that? And because there was only 14 years between us, so there were a lot of wrangling of kids if you were going to take them somewhere. And the story goes that when we would do this, my mom would look at my dad and say, you watch John, I'll watch the other 9. And it really was not because I was some terror. It was because I just had to know how everything worked, why people did stuff, what was behind that door. And I think that for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is why we start in many cases what we do. But I've also seen this part get drained out of people because it is all feel easy to go, well, this is what we do here. This is how it works. This is what have you worked with anybody in my industry? I hear that all the time from entrepreneurs that are talking about hiring our agency, our marketing agency. Have you worked with anyone else in my industry? And the question I always ask is say, no, thankfully. Because I can bring you some new ideas. I'm going to bring you things that from outside. One of the practices that I have done religiously from a curiosity standpoint is that I have a marketing consulting business. I talk about and write about marketing, but I get some of my best ideas by mining other industries. I love to read books about math and about architecture and about nature, because I find that the natural patterns that go on in other industries have so much to inform what it is that we're doing, or certainly the innovations. Anything that I've created over the 30-year course that somebody would point to as an innovation, I can almost guarantee you that it was informed by some of these I think as a practice we need to do. So here's your question for curiosity. What sort of outrageous experiment could you try today? And I think the thing about this is some people are just naturally more curious. That was one of the gifts that I think I was given. But I think this is like a lot of these pillars, something that has to be intentional. You have to go out of your way to do something differently. And in some cases, it can just be as silly as I'm going to drive home a different way because, we just, have you ever done that before? You get in your car and you drive home and you go like, whoa, I don't even remember driving, because it's so rote. It's just like, that's what I do. That's my habit. That's my routine. And I think that while routines can serve us well, I think they can also keep us locked in patterns that aren't necessarily that healthy. Okay, right in the middle of this thing is mindfulness. Now, again, really hot topic, lots of books, lots of, we could do course on just what are the practices to ways to bring mindfulness. But I think for entrepreneurs, it bears repeating that a great deal of the stress that we feel in any aspect of our business is when we worry about things that are out of our control. We can't control the meeting tomorrow. We can't control what's going to happen with that new client that we pitched. We can't control what's going to happen, when we decide we want to sell our business. I mean, all the things that we think about, out there in the future, and we stress about because, we want them to go a certain way, or we have a plan for them to go a certain way. But in trying to control them, and again, the only thing we can control, pretty much ever, is how we respond and how we show up. But trying to control things that are out of our control, even crazy things like the weather, is really how I think you suck all the joy out of this entrepreneurial journey, and certainly to some degree, to a large degree, out of your life. And I've been talking about, the future and lamenting and trying to control the future, but the past has a real hold on us as well in so many cases. It's like, I'm not good enough. This didn't work before. Why should I think it's going to work now? These other people that that used to be my friends, doubt me now. And so maybe I should doubt myself. So the past and the future they hold us so tight. And again, the only thing that we can control is how we respond to what's happening right now and how we show up. Those are the only two things we can control. There is a tremendous quote from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, that says, between stimulus and response, there is a moment. And in that moment lies our freedom. Between something happening and how we respond, in that moment, that present mindful moment, lies our freedom. And we just have to get better at bringing that up time and time and time and time again every single day, because I guarantee you the past and the future is going to pull at you that something's going to happen that is going to set you off and ruin your day. Has that ever happened to you before? Somebody came in, said something, boom, whole day's gone. Now, I don't even know what I did today, but I sure was busy, is, how we sum up the day when we come home. So practices for mindfulness, again, for me, I'm not going to preach any prescriptions here, but for me, every morning when I get up, I meditate, I try to do some sort of exercise, I drink lemon water, I read something that is inspirational to me, I journal, not necessarily because it's anything I'm going to keep, but just because it keeps me in the habit of writing. And all of those things, because they're an intentional practice, it's very easy for me to do them in a completely mindful state. So what's something for sure must change in order to live your most adventurous life? And for me, I can't live my most adventurous life if I'm not at peace. And what mindfulness does for me, the practice of being as present as possible, and trust me, I get it wrong a million times a day, but as being as present as possible is when I feel at peace. In fact, to me, and a lot of people I think learn these things over time, my physical body will tell me when I'm at peace or not at peace. And there's a very good chance that I need that moment to bring myself back into the present moment with some practice. It might just be as simple as breathing intentionally. But I think that this is something that, I find myself wrestling with every day. But the more often I'm successful doing this, the greater dividends that it pays. Oh, gosh, they just keep getting harder, don't they? Non-judgment. Gosh, minute by minute, our mind's engaged in, judging and experiencing everything. Think about the last time you went strolling down the sidewalk. Our minds are just like, what's that person doing? What's that person wearing? Why is that car going so fast? Boy, that building, I like the color of that building. Our minds are just constantly yes, no, good, bad all day long. And sometimes we're even projecting that on what we think might happen. And so one of the things that that I've experienced over time is obviously we're all familiar with kind of that negative, cynical attitude that most people don't really like being around. It's constantly something's wrong with everything. I mean, there's one of those people in every meeting, right? That you go to. Something's wrong with everything, and I think we all recognize that as not necessarily healthy. But I'll tell you the part that we don't necessarily think about is how often we're thinking, well, this is really good. This is exactly what I wanted. I'm successful. I made this happen. How often we're judging things as good. And part of the challenge with this, for me at least, has been is that I can't tell you how many times over the years something happened that I thought, oh, that's not good. That's not what I wanted. This is not going to work out now. I missed that meeting or I missed that opportunity. And then the very next day, a way better opportunity showed up, a way better path, presented itself because I missed the other one that I thought was the sure thing. And I don't, people have lots of names, for that kind of thing, but I've just seen it enough times in my entrepreneurial journey that it really has me trusting the fact that if something didn't happen, it wasn't supposed to. If something did happen, it was supposed to. Neither of those are good or bad. They're simply what was supposed to happen. So your question for non-judgment was one critical view, event, or statement that you can release today, and that could be about yourself, about your business, about others. I mean, gosh, we're all struggling with this year. We're struggling with the political environment, or at least I think a lot of people are. But those kind of viewing things as good or bad, and there's no question that there's some things that we really have to have a whole lot of empathy to think aren't bad. But I think that it's the way we respond in judgment of good or bad that I think is the practice that really drains us. So one of the things, and I got this from Deepak Chopra, that I try to practice this as often as possible, just because it's a reminder, not because I succeed at it by any means, but just at some point during the day, maybe it's when you get up, at some point during the day, just pledge for an hour. Okay, I'm going to witness how often I'm judging things, and I'm not going to judge that or good or bad as good or bad. I'm simply going to witness. Anybody need a little resilience this year? I think that resilience is certainly something that it shows up. It's something we need. It's something we need to practice. We need to nurture. But in any entrepreneur that I'm familiar with, certainly familiar with their story closely, not the one that we read about, but familiar with their story closely, they didn't have a straight path that said, I'm going to start this business. I'm going to sell it for $500 million, after a, successful IPO. I mean, there are very few businesses that went on the path that we ultimately see them arriving at. And what the most successful people, certainly the most positive people, have the ability to do is reframe everything that happens. Not as I said in the last pillar, not necessarily as good or bad, I failed, or I succeeded, but very much in that light of, okay, this thing didn't work, this experiment didn't work, this product didn't work, the market didn't want it this certain way. What did that teach me? What was I here to learn from that? How can I use what I learned from that particular experiment to move to the next level? And I think that that's a level of resilience. It's not resilience. Resilience a lot of times gets, it's like that hustle, just keep going, keep doing, put your head down and bash through the next wall. And I think resilience is actually a lot smarter than that. And it's really more of a trait that says, I'm not, this is not about me. I didn't fail. This thing didn't, resonate with the market the way that I thought it was going to resonate. So what did I learn from that? What was missing? What do I need to add? What's the next step? And I think that's the trait that I think I'm talking about that we need to work on there. And generally speaking, resilience comes from what our greatest gifts are and what our greatest skills are. So What is your greatest skill? And that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, I'm a, one heck of a web designer. That is that's part talent, that's part skill, but it's also something that your gifts, your innate gifts, allowed you to get good at. So what are your innate gifts? What are your innate skills? How can you use them to serve? Okay, I've got one more. Grace, or certainly some people would talk about this as gratitude. I know that many this year, 2020, there are many businesses, many individuals who really find it hard to point to anything that they can be grateful for. There certainly are businesses, by no fault of their own, that have just been completely wiped out by the tsunami that is this pandemic. But I also see a lot of businesses that have taken this moment to pause and say, well, yeah, things aren't like I like them. They're not normal. They're not the way they were. Things are changing. Maybe they'll never come back. But holy cow, do I have a lot to be grateful for? And it's one of those things that I think a lot of people, it's kind of almost a throwaway. It's like, grateful. You see that on on the Instagram posts, and it's almost a throwaway. But gratefulness, grace, I think, is a practice. It is something that again, going back to every one of these pillars has a library shelf full of books that have been written about this very specific topic. But it is just scientifically proven that if we stop and reflect on how far we've come, as opposed to simply looking at the horizon that keeps moving away from us, we will be much more appreciative of the gifts that we have, of the gifts that we've been given, of the opportunities that we have. I know a lot of business owners, one of the things that happens, and I was guilty of this, is you start taking things for granted. You start taking clients for granted. You start taking your business for granted because, hey, I'm comfortable. I'm making a good living. This is okay. I go home, at the hours I want to go home. But I think at some point, you stick with this long enough, then the idea of revenue and headcount and successful accolades will take back seat to the impact that you've made in people's lives. And I think that's the gift of grace and gratitude. So what's the most wonderful thing you get to experience every day? So Maria, that's where I want to end it today.
John, thank you so much. This has been incredible. For all of you that are listening, we're so excited to have Q&A right now with John. So we have a few minutes through the end of this hour. In these next few moments, we'll have a survey actually put in the chat while you're listening or contributing to Q&A. Make sure you fill out the survey. We can invite John back knowing your feedback. So take the 2.5 minutes that it does take, we have timed that, to fill out the survey and let us know what you've thought about this talk so far. John, are you interested in answering some of the questions that our community has?
Yeah, whatever would be useful and helpful, that's what I'm interested in.
Amazing. All right, great. So John, first and foremost, from our community, what are your personal tips and tricks to promote self-discipline?
Well, I think this is a tough one for me. I like Pop-Tarts, let's face it. But for me, it really starts with, knowing the impact that you're trying to make. And I don't want to be cliche, but I really do think that for me, it's a lot easier for me to be disciplined. It's a lot easier for me to stay on my priorities when I know what those priorities are. So for me, one of the things that my team and I do on a quarterly, monthly, and to some level a weekly basis is that we say, look, these are the 3 things that matter this quarter. They're the only 3 things that matter. Sure, you've all got your projects, you've all got your things, but let's analyze. This is what we've said are the objectives for this quarter. So let's analyze does this choice to say yes to this and no to this, move us towards advancing, our objectives? And I think having that, I think it's the problem with discipline is it also takes willpower, for a lot of people. And willpower is something that gets, I can feel it by, 3 o'clock. I'm done a lot of days in the willpower category and the decision-making category. And so by having a set, like, no, here's my filter that I can go back to. Oops. Okay. I know the answer to that question. I don't have to depend on willpower anymore.
John, thank you so much. I want to shout out Awana. She actually sent us a private message, but Awana, I'd like to read it out loud. Awana says, wow, how wonderful to hear an entrepreneur referring to grace, a bit different than gratitude. Being thankful is different than being graceful towards your clients. Beautifully said, Awana. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yep.
John, we have a few other questions in just a few more minutes, so let's see what we can get to.
All right.
What is one shift that you have made in 2020 that has had a strong impact on your life in a positive way?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing that I've done is I've had more conversations with people. I've gotten closer to my customers. I've actually made some choices about who, gosh, I'm going to say this and it's going to sound terrible, but then I'll come back and reframe it. Who deserves that attention? And I don't mean that as like somebody has to be deserving, but a lot of what we do, especially as entrepreneurs and trying to serve customers, is we need to grow with them. We need to, not just look at it as I serve you and you give me money. It is a mutual, partnership and understanding. And so I think like a lot of people, probably the shift I've made is to really kind of analyze, who those people are and how I want to spend my time, and to really focus on making those that make a difference in my life and whose lives I can make a difference in, get the priority that they deserve.
Oh, John, so well said. Thank you so much. I think we can wrap it up with just one more question from our audience. This is a really immensely important question I know that a lot of founders are feeling. What is your biggest piece of advice for a tired entrepreneur who hasn't seen the fruits of their labor yet?
Go to work on yourself. Keep working on yourself. It is a lot of times we're tired because mind, body, or spirit. One of those three is not getting the attention that they need. I know that when I get tired and feeling, and some people, that how you choose to do this is totally up to you. Exercise is so important for me as an entrepreneur for fighting fatigue. I know a lot of people exercise makes them tired, but even if that's just, okay, I'm not getting anywhere. I do this all the time. I'm not getting anywhere. Like I can't write this document. It's just not going anywhere. Just go take a walk around the block, or 3 blocks or 5 blocks, and come back and look at it with a whole new set of eyes, and hopefully a set of eyes that has been a little bit rejuvenated. That to me, and I have the benefit of living in the mountains, and going and sitting under a lodgepole pine, on a granite slab looking out over the Continental Divide is a tremendous way to get re-energized. So find yours.
Oh, so beautifully said, John. And I think we might have time. We just have 1 or 2 more minutes. So Damon Green from our audience, any tips on getting out of your head and moving forward on a new business after launching a few others? As I get older, the doubts are louder and takes longer to get going, is what Damon has said. Any advice to Damon?
Sure. So find the one element of that new venture. And again, I'm talking in giant generalities here because I don't really know, Damon, what you're wrestling with specifically. But find the one element in that new venture that brings you joy. A lot of times what happens is that there are 2 or 3 things that can keep us going while the other 7 are just things that have to be done. So find that thing that you're the most joyful about in that new venture. And then start figuring out who can you partner with, who can you do other things with to get that stuff. Because again, a lot of times the doubts and things are because you're no good at the books. You don't like the finance part of whatever those things are. And so that's what dragged you down last time. But there was joy in some aspect of why you started it, I'm guessing. So find the joyful thing that is contained in why you want to do this new venture, and then figure out who can help you get the other parts done.
John, thank you so much. I think
bet.
we're at time now. Everyone that is still with us, again, your attention is a gift. Thank you so much for being an incredible part of our community. We are so grateful. John, thank you so much for imparting your wisdom and taking the time to speak to this community. You've shared such great insights and overview. We are so grateful. So on behalf of NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone in attendance today, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John. So for all of you still listening, we would love for you to join us on our upcoming webinars, Venture Finance Trends with Wilson Cincini and other special guests, Friday, December 11th. And we actually have coming up on December 15th, Top 10 Tips, Creativity, Brand, and Innovation for Big Impact in 2021. So please join us for additional events. We would love to have you. We love our community so much. Please take 2 minutes to fill out the survey, letting John and NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center know how you felt and what you learned through this conversation today. It is how we actually bring additional experts like John onto our platform to make sure we are serving you. So again, thank you all so much. We hope you have an incredible day.